Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that's going to have you coming back for more episodes. And if you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, as always, I welcome you back and I hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get to the main event, for my people who are watching from YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes of the podcast. If you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for those who would like to donate to help us grow this platform, there are 4 ways in which you can do that. If you're on Cash App, you can hit us up using the handle $IDTALK4ED. If you're on Venmo, you can use the handle @Kwame SM. And if you're paying with PayPal, you can use the URL paypal.me/Kwame SM. And for those who are day ones and have been rocking with Identity Talk for the past 5 years, you can become a patron today and have access to behind the scenes footage of the podcast, as well as receive some perks as a token of my appreciation for all of the support you've given me over these years. And then, of course, to listen to past or future episodes of the podcast, you can go to our main website at IDTALK4EDucators.com. Now, for people who are looking for new books to read, make sure you add Learn to Relearn, Supporting Identity and Culture Forming Classroom in your list. And it's a book that took me 3 years to write. It's a book that continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. I've been so fortunate to get the reviews and the feedback that I've received about the book, especially during these difficult times. If you're looking for something that's going to bring you joy, some inspiration, given what's happening around us today, please pick up Learn to Relearn. You can get it at Routledge. You can go to the Stenhouse website. And you can go to our main website at learntorelearn.com, where you'll also receive some more information about the book, what you can learn from it, and how you can support. And then, of course, for my people who have purchased the book and have read through it, if you love what you read, please leave a review either on Amazon, Goodreads, or wherever you leave your reviews for books. Thank you again for the support. I appreciate it all. All right, people. So today's guest is somebody who I actually had a chance to meet during my time in Ethiopia. She is one of the dopest math teachers I've come across, and this is coming from a math teacher himself. So when I say someone is dope when it comes to math, I mean that by every sense of the word. But she is somebody who has gone through some personal challenges, but she's always found a way to overcome those challenges to keep on being her and to thrive in wherever she does. So I'm so excited to finally have her on this platform to share her story and for you all to learn a little bit more about her. So without further ado, I want to bring on Tekia Timmons to the podcast. Well, I call her Kia, but y'all can call it Tekia or whatever she wants you to call her. I'll leave that to her when she comes on. But she's going to go ahead and share her story and everything that we need to know about her and what she's doing right now. So let's bring her on. Hey.
Hey, thank you for that. That was a lovely introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we all about affirmations here.
Yes.
So we appreciate you coming on to share your story. I know this is something that we had planned months before, but we wanted the time to be right for you to be able to share everything. So that time is finally coming. We're here.
And I always say I'm ready to tell my story. And this is literally the very first podcast I've ever done. So I am so thankful that when I am finally ready to tell my story, it is with you, another dope math teacher and educator.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. I can't believe this is your first one.
Yep.
You need to be on more podcasts. We'll talk about that
Yep.
off air. We gotta get you out here, out in these streets.
Yes.
Yeah, but listen, Kia, as I mentioned to the audience, usually when I bring people on, I'm actually talking to them for the first time, meeting them for the first time. But you're one of the rare guests where there's a prior relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually met you in person, and in my early years being abroad, you're one of the first people that really reached out to help a brother out when he was trying to get into the international education game. So I don't forget those moments, and I appreciate all that you did at that time. So thank you.
You are very welcome. And I just have to say, don't forget, we also did a flash mob together. Very
Oh,
first time I met you.
you know what? You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
so
we
I
did.
appreciate that. Thank you for helping me get that flash mob going at the conference.
Nah, I appreciate that too. Nah, that was cool.
That's one of my core memories.
Yes, awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started because there's so much to unpack
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much that I want you to share. So let's just start from the beginning.
Okay.
Just tell us what brought you here, what got you into education in the first place.
Well, I had no idea that I was going to be an educator. Um, I always loved math. And so I majored in math in college. And then, I'm like, okay, I need to do something. I'm graduated now. Um, and I just thought back to all the experiences that I had before that. So, like, my very first job was teaching, not teaching, but working at the Boys and Girls Club, working with the little kids. And then in college, I was an AmeriCorps volunteer. And so I worked at a community center and I ran the tutorial program. And when I thought about it, I have always been tutoring and working with children and helping. So one of my sorority sisters said, "Hey, there's this job fair for teachers, and I think you should go." So I went, and the very first school that I talked to hired me. And that's just the beginning of my story. I didn't
Wow.
know that I was going to be a teacher, and now I can't think of anything else I'd rather do.
Wow, that's amazing. And I see the parallels. So I also was a math major. I
Mhm.
also did some work with AmeriCorps programs, more
Mm,
specifically in the tri-state area. There's one called Education Works, which was basically the school-based equivalent of City Year.
okay.
So that's what I did after I finished my undergrad, and that's what gave me the Ed Award money to go back to school and then get my initial teaching cert. So that's how I got
Oh,
started.
cool. I didn't
Yeah.
know we had an AmeriCorps link. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I also was working at the YMCA during my undergrad, also doing tutoring and mentoring
Mhm.
kids. So that's really what got me into
Yeah.
working with kids, not even the classroom, but just working with them.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. But let's go ahead and talk about your own schooling. So when we all go through this K-12 system, there's ups and downs. Um, there's challenges, there's triumphs, and everything in between. I want you to just share if you had any challenges during that time in terms of embracing who you were as a human, and did that prevent you from showing up as your full self at any point during that K-12 schooling?
Okay. Well, I have a very interesting K-12 experience.
Share.
Between kindergarten and 12th grade, I actually attended 14 different schools, and that's a conversation for another day. But kindergarten through ninth grade, I was mostly in Flint, Michigan, where I'm from. And I never had a problem showing up as my authentic self in Flint. Like, I can't think of a time where I felt like I had to pull back a little bit or just not be my complete self. But in ninth grade, my family relocated to Georgia. And that was the very first time I had the feeling like, I don't think these people necessarily want me here, or I don't belong here. And I had some pretty negative experiences with my teachers my ninth grade year, like to the point where I was so shocked by one teacher's behavior. I actually hyperventilated and had to leave school because it was just shocking. Like, I can still recall, the day the teacher, like, basically, I went to hand her something, my notebook, for a notebook check, and she like moved her hand so it would fall to the floor to make me pick it up, and I had never
What?
experienced anything like that before in my life. So kind of from that moment, I just kind of became the quiet student. That's not who I was prior to that day, and I just became more of an observer in Georgia. But I think that ended once I got to college. But high school, I definitely was a more quiet version of who I am today.
All
So
right.
yeah, it was interesting. It was a change in dynamics.
All right. That's what's up. Now, you already mentioned how you became an educator and what
Mhm.
brought you to it. But I want to fast forward a little bit and talk to me about how you arrived at the decision to move out of Georgia and then start teaching abroad as a Black woman, because we know that there's a dynamic there when you do make a move like that. So just tell me where the motivation came from and what were some of the ups and downs that happened during that time.
I want to say it was more inspiration, because I had never even considered it. It was never even a blip on my radar,
Had you
and
traveled prior,
I didn't
like
even have a
outside the country?
didn't even have a passport when I was hired for my first international job.
Wow.
That was a hustle, trying to hurry up and get everything done before I left. I had traveled around the country before, but I had never left the country.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of in a place with teaching where I felt like I had kind of done everything. I taught at different types of school. I had been a math coach, a math teacher, and I was not interested in being an administrator. So I wasn't sure what next, like what's next for me as a teacher. And it was a frustrating time. And I remember I read an article. It was a viral article about a woman named Tanae Bernard, and how she was a single mom with three small children, and she was living in the UAE, and she shared her story. And so I just never seen anything like that before. And I said, well, if she can do it with three, I can do it with one. So I emailed the person who wrote the article. Her name is Ronnie. She goes by Ronnie the Travel Guru. And I emailed and I sent maybe Tanae an inbox message on Facebook. And I just said, where do I start? you know? And she gave me some tips. And long story short, like, those are two people that I am the closest to in this world now. And they both helped me navigate, like, looking for a job and moving overseas and all that. So the motivation, like I said, it was more inspiration. I saw someone doing something so amazing, and I just wanted to know, how could I try that? So I didn't even have any, like I said at that point, anything to compare it to, because it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. So I was just ready for a new adventure. And like I said, I didn't even have a passport. I reached out to them late May. I got my profile together by June, and I was hired like within the first 6 days. And then we moved in July. I didn't have time to think or worry or anything. I just had to get it together and be there for the first day of school.
Now, were there certain things going on at your previous school in the States that may have helped propel you to make that move? I'm just curious.
No, I actually had a wonderful opportunity. I long term subbed at the high school that I graduated from. I was working a job as a math coach, and our philosophies were just not in alignment. So I left there in October of that school year, and there ended up being a position available at the place where I graduated. And a lot of the educators from my time at the high school were still there. So I was actually having one of the best teaching experiences of my life. But I just knew that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And on a personal level, I've always said that I didn't want to start exploring the world in retirement because one, tomorrow's not promised. You don't know what your health or, what your state of being will be 45, that far out in the future. So I decided that, moving overseas was going to be best for me because I could give myself little doses of that retirement life while still trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do in my current space. So I was in a pretty good situation before I went overseas.
All right. So when you went overseas, if I'm not mistaken, the first country you were in, was it Vietnam?
It was Vietnam. That's
You were in Vietnam.
a lot of people know me from my Black mom in Vietnam era.
Yeah.
That was a time.
Yeah, yes, it was.
That was a time.
And of course, the researcher in me had to dig a little bit, but because there's so much in that chapter that I feel is important to share.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that there were things that were going on during that time that were just totally not okay.
And I know what you're talking about, and I'm
But
definitely okay if you do want to ask about that.
okay, I always be like, nah, because I know some people could be getting triggered by that.
Well, it did take me quite a while, but I do think that I am in a place now where I can discuss that. It took a while to heal from that situation, but
Yeah.
I definitely understand it a lot better now than I did back then.
All right, I'm glad that you've gotten to a point where you could have conversation about it. But I'm just gonna go ahead and just give a Clip Notes version of what went on. I'm not gonna
Okay.
give all the details, but just for those who don't know, um, back when Kia was teaching at this school in Vietnam, um, this is around a time when politically back here in the States, there are a lot of things going on. If I'm not mistaken, this is, I think, around the time when I think Donald Trump was in office the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of energy that was going on at that time. And sometimes when that energy comes out, it trickles down to our young people. And our young people end up doing some things that are very much racially motivated and harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And this led to a culminating moment where your room ends up getting vandalized by a group of students
Mm-hmm.
that you had taught
For 2 years.
for 2 years. 2 years. And they decided to vandalize your room, left messages on there and everything. So there was a lot that happened. And the way that chapter ended at the school, it wasn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give you an opportunity to just talk about, like, number one, like, what were some of the lessons that you may have learned during that time, and how were you able to get to a place where you were able to overcome that? Because that's a
Ooh,
lot.
I am still overcoming. um,
Process.
yes. Repeat your question again, the first part.
Yeah, like, what were some of the things that you may have not learned, but, like, what were your thoughts just after
Okay.
everything?
Like my thoughts and my takeaways,
Yeah.
lessons. Well, one, that situation, uh, it really taught me to stand in my power. I will leave when I'm ready because, I went to that school for a very specific reason. And it was because I wanted IB experience. And I didn't want to leave until I, completed a whole cycle with a group of students and really felt like I understood what I was doing. So I had reasons for being at that school because I was in another school in another part of Hanoi before I went to that school. So it was just a reminder to me to not be moved by the behavior of others. And honestly, people don't like the word, but like by the ignorance of others, because I know that deep down, those students did not truly understand what they were doing. Um, I'm sure they thought it was funny. Uh, I'm sure on some level they knew it was mean, but I don't think they understood how deeply rooted in racism it was, how hurtful it was. There was a lot going on there. So when I returned the next school year, people were like, "Oh, I'm surprised you're still here." I would have left. And it never crossed my mind to leave because, again, I knew why I was there and I continued to show up as myself and, continue to teach the way that I did. And I was able to close that chapter on a very positive note with the next group of students that I had to finish and they graduated.
So that actually happened the first year around.
Yeah.
Wow.
I forgot. So I want to correct, I was with that group for 1 year. So my second group for 2 years. And that group, they had a teacher that was very much my opposite. He was an older white man. I don't think anyone was expecting to have a teacher like me. And my expertise was often questioned. I recall even my principal, we were hired at the same time. He started kind of being a mouthpiece for some of the questions that parents were asking about my qualifications that were obviously rooted in racism and prejudice. But I really learned how to stand up for myself in a way that I never had to at home because I had never been challenged in that way in Georgia as a teacher. So, yeah.
Hi friends, it's me, Thaddeus from Thaddeus Nature Notebook. Are you loving our journey into the wild and learning all about awesome animals? Then don't forget to subscribe. You can find Thaddeus Nature Notebook on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Just hit that subscribe button and never miss a new episode. And if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment about your favorite animal. Thanks for listening and exploring nature with me. Let's keep discovering together. Now back to my daddy's cell.
And then where in Georgia did you grow up?
Metro Atlanta.
Okay.
I'm not going to be one of those people that says Atlanta when I know I lived in Norcross, Georgia, in Gwinnett County. But I grew up in Metro Atlanta, north. I think it's northeast of the city. So yeah, and I went to high school. So that experience I told you at the beginning of high school, like I said, I went to 14 different schools. That's another story. But where I graduated from was a very diverse school. I mean, 25% of everybody, 25 Black, 25 white, Asian, Hispanic. So I did end up graduating on a good note, on a positive note with those school experiences, but never experienced anything like I did in Hanoi. It definitely changed me as a person. I can say there was the before Hanoi Kia and there is the after Hanoi Kia.
And I was blessed to get the After Hanoi one, which we'll get to.
Yes.
Before we do that, I have a question regarding just the transient nature of your early years in school. And I'm wondering if that allowed you to have a clear perspective of what international school is like, because the kids that you teach, they also are coming from transient backgrounds where their parents are moving every few years because of their jobs, whether they're with a mission or an embassy or an NGO, or they're just in some form of foreign service. They're constantly moving. So I'm wondering if your own experience moving between the different schools translated in some way to you better understanding the international school ecosystem that you were teaching within.
I think it was for sure a bonus for me because I definitely could relate to those students. And I mean, and then I have a daughter, so she was also having to have that experience, and watching her adjust to friendships and different cultures. So one thing about my daughter is she had her passport 4 years before I did, because she would spend time living with me and then living with her father. So she started her international school experience in Germany. And then I picked it up in Vietnam. So between my personal experience, back in the day, going to different schools, and then the present, being able to watch my daughter navigate different spaces, it definitely helped me have a different type of connection to my students, and just really be able to understand what it's like. Whenever I would have a new kid to come in, like, it's already transient, but then you get the kids who come in later in the school year, and they think everybody knows everybody already. And just, I was really big on community in my classroom, because I'm like, we are who and what we have in this moment. And I've always been able to stay anchored in the present moment, and I bring them into that experience with me.
Yeah, for sure. So now you're moving from Vietnam, and then you end up moving to Ethiopia.
Yes.
And that's how you and I connected. And I will say this, when I met you, you just looked very reinvigorated. The energy was there. You were in a zone. You were just loving what you were doing.
I was in a happy place.
Very happy place
Mm-hmm.
when we connected. So I want you to just talk to me about the Ethiopia chapter of your international school experience, and how were you able to rediscover that joy?
Well, I was very intentional about the move to Ethiopia. When I compared to Vietnam, that was my down for whatever. I almost was in Kazakhstan, but I chose Vietnam at the last minute because I don't like long winters. So I was open to anything the first time. The second time, I said, I do not want to be the only Black person in the school. I was always the only Black American. It was always just me and my daughter. We're in so many random publications. I saw her on the cover of the school in Hanoi like 2 years after we left.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was just like I said, it took a lot of healing, and that was a part of my healing journey, was to not be in a place where I just instantly stood out everywhere I went. And I loved Ethiopia for that. Like I loved being in a place where everybody calls you sister, and made you feel like you were home. You were there. You saw the popcorn and coffee ceremony in the morning. Like, it was just, I don't even have the words to describe the level of peace that I had when I was in Addis. So you met me, well, that probably was around 2019, maybe. I can't
Uh,
remember if it was before or
it would have been.
after.
I
Or
think it would have been 2020 because the conference that I went to at your school
mm-hmm.
happened February. It was a month, right? It was a month before COVID, actually.
Okay,
It was a
because I
month
couldn't
before.
remember if you met me on crutches or not, or if I
No,
was on the cane at that point.
we'll get to that. This is
Yeah.
prior to. This is
Okay.
prior to that.
Because we can get to that, but I just want you to know, like, even that situation did not take away from the joy that I had when I was in Ethiopia. I was so supported there. My principal was amazing. I had never worked at a school where I just felt like everyone just had that it factor as a teacher in their own way. That was an amazing group of educators. I could go on.
Yeah,
Hands down, ICS, one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life as a teacher, as a woman, as a mother. Like, it was great.
I think ICS for me is the only place where I got hired twice and never worked a single day at the school.
Yep.
Because COVID happened, because I was supposed to actually be there as a sub.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, because I filled out
That's what
all
we
the
were talking
paperwork
about.
and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And then I signed the contract in March. And then a week later, I'm back in Boston because of COVID
Mm-hmm.
and end up there for the next 10 months. So by the time I got back, I had to start from scratch again. And now reapply for that same position, got the job again.
Okay.
But then you had the intertribal conflict with Tigray and
Mm-hmm.
Amhara, and that pretty much took my family out of Ethiopia for good. So we never got the chance to finish out the tour we had in Ethiopia, which is unfortunate. So I never really got to get the full experience of Ethiopia because of COVID and
Mm-hmm.
other interruptions. Um, but I know for you, I remember when you had to get your knee surgery and everything, and you were documenting that,
Mm-hmm.
and just the rehab and the support you're getting from the ICS community. Like they really, I could attest to that, to the fact that they really took their time and said, "Hey, just do what you gotta do.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna keep the seat warm for you."
Yep. Yeah, they were so supportive. Like, when I tell you, I've never, you know how schools have community in the name?
Right.
International Community School. No, we were a legit community. Like, it was not just in the name, it was like who they were. Like, I never had been in a school culture like that. And wow. And we have another parallel too, because I actually only left ICS because of COVID. You know, I originally planned to be there until 2025.
Mm.
So it's always, this is so cheesy, but it's like to me, it's like the one that got away. you know,
Right.
like, I think about it all the time because even my daughter brings it up sometimes. Like, she sees her friends who are still there and they're all graduating together this year. She's a senior as well. And we just sometimes kind of talk about like what it might have been like, had we stayed there, how our lives would have been different.
Yeah. Well, you could always go back.
I
I
could.
mean, we know some people who are there that could definitely bring you back. What's his name? I think Renee. You know
Yep.
Renee?
That's my soror.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Because when Renee first got the job out there, she hit me up and was asking me questions about Addis. So I was actually giving her some information around that, but I'm glad that she got there. I wish I was there when she was the principal, because I felt like my experience probably would have been a little bit different. But sometimes the timing doesn't work out the way you want it to. But I'm happy that she's there, and ICS is elevated to another level with her being there.
And I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, but I have a 3-year-old son now that I would not.
I do know that.
So, I'm like, things happen for a reason. He might not have been created if I were still in Ethiopia. So, it's give and take.
So let's talk about returning back to the States. So you mentioned that COVID pretty much brought you back.
Yes.
And you ultimately made the decision to come back and teach within K-12 system in the States. So talk to me about transitioning back to that space. I know that had to have been tough.
Well, I don't listen. Like, I don't know if I made the decision or if the decision made me. I don't know. I was going a little bit back to ICS. So when COVID hit, we were all given the option to take a 1-year sabbatical. So I opted to take the 1-year sabbatical, and I came back to America. Well, during my sabbatical, I'm with child now. So because of what I remembered about my experiences with getting medical care and healthcare, and I won't get too much into it, but I was involved in a really bad accident in Ethiopia, and I had to be medevaced to South Africa for probably like 3 surgeries I had there. Then I had to get my follow-up surgeries in Dubai. And I was just thinking, like, if I go back, and I was still recovering, I had surgery in that January right before we left. And that was like a 2-year healing process. So between me still recovering from the knee surgery and having a newborn, I said, okay, I think I need 1 more year of sabbatical. So now I'm on 2-year sabbatical. Then I started 2 companies during that time. And I started my jewelry shop, Boutique Latrice, on Etsy. And then I started Exceptional Math, coaching and consulting online. And it was going well. And I said, well, maybe I need a 3rd year of sabbatical, So during that time, I was always able to find a full-time online teaching job. But I was so rooted in like trying to figure out, who am I now? Because I'm never going to be the person that I was before COVID. Things are totally different. And then that turned into year 4, and now I'm in year 5. So what was happening was every year I was still having offers to return overseas, but I would weigh the option. I'm like, okay, I'll stay another year. Now it's my daughter's junior year of high school. And we had become accustomed to certain school experiences. So now I am working at one of the top private schools in Metro Atlanta, and my daughter goes there as well. So that was a big part of why I stayed, was because I wanted my daughter to be able to establish community in the place where she was born. She was born in Atlanta. But she spent so much time overseas, and this is still her home that she never really had a chance to live in. So I decided to go back into K-12, like the traditional face-to-face, so that my daughter and I could live the life that we had been living before, where we go to school together and we go to events together. And that was, like I said, that was the decision, to just stay here for 2 years more, now running into 5 years, to allow her to establish roots and community. And that's definitely happening. Her life is amazing. That's my social butterfly. But that's what happened. And now that she'll be graduating spring 2025, we're all gonna start new journeys together. Thank you.
Yes. The Identity Talk for Educators Live podcast is just one piece of the work that we do under Identity Talk Consulting, which we've had since 2019. And since then, we've had the privilege of working with 40 different schools, districts, and organizations across the globe. And we want to continue to add to that number in this new year. So if you are a school, if you're an educator or an organization that's looking to receive professional development and consulting services within any of our pillars, whether it's anti-bias, anti-racist practices, culturally responsive teaching, or identity affirming education, we are the firm for you, and we love to learn more about your needs. When you have a chance, make sure you go to our website at identitytalk4educators.com to learn more about our services and to schedule a discovery call today. We love to hear from you.
My baby, she was 8 when we first went overseas. So
yeah, I remember your daughter. I remember me and her. Yeah. Wow.
She's ready for her adventures. I'm prepping for mine, and that's where we are now.
So let's talk about that journey, because there are a lot of people who struggle to figure out who they are and what they want to do once they are away from the classroom. And I feel like when you have that sabbatical or that time away from the classroom, you allow your mind to have the clarity and the space to figure things out and to process what you want to do. I know that was the case for me. I honestly believe that if I didn't have that time away, this podcast would not be existing. Learn to Relearn would not have been written, and all these other things that I've done. So I know in your case, you started EMC Square, which we want to talk about. And I want you to just talk about not just the services, but really, how does EMC Square embody the full human that you are?
Well, first, that company, that's my baby.
Yeah.
And, as a teacher, there are always things that you want to do, but you don't have time, or that's not necessarily the direction a school is going in, or, you might not be in alignment on certain things with the school. So exceptional math was my opportunity to just completely be myself in that educational space. And I'm a big Socratic method teacher. I'm a big experience first, formalize later. I'm hands-on, I'm pattern seeking, like all those things that you sometimes don't have the time to do in a regular traditional classroom with 20 to 30 kids, or however many. I really can just focus in on one-on-one coaching sessions. And it's just been an amazing experience. I really it's just it was the freedom. The freedom. I got my first taste of running an education company how I wanted to run it. And that's when I kept saying, maybe one more year of sabbatical. I could keep doing this. And now I have additional teachers who work for me or with me. And so I'm able to to spread this knowledge that I've acquired over 17 years working in different schools in different countries. And I feel like exceptional math is like the best of all the things that I have learned in all the different spaces that I worked in. So,
yeah. That's beautiful. And to know that if one day you decide, I don't want to be in the classroom anymore, you can fall back on EMC Square. You can fall back on your jewelry store on Etsy. That's such a luxury. And I feel like that's something that doesn't get stressed enough when we first decide to embark on a career as an educator. They don't talk about just the transferable skills that we acquire that allow us to start our own enterprises and businesses. So for you to be able to have the space to figure out that for yourself and that time is so valuable.
Yeah. And going back into K-12 in America was a very tough decision because I actually had to make more sacrifices returning to K-12 education and income than I did the other direction, you know. But again, there were goals, there were reasons that it was done. But you know, when I hear you say like fall back on the business, it kind of felt like I fell back onto the K-12 experience, to be honest, because it's so challenging to go back into a space where others dictate some of the most important decisions that you would like to make on your own after you've been doing everything your way. You know?
We're going to have a conversation off air about this because that's kind of where I am right now. But please go on.
Oh, no, I was just, you know, just when I think about it, like between which one is the fallback on, it's definitely not, you know, yeah, I'll leave it right there to the offline conversation.
Yeah. But just to kind of put a bow on the conversation, I will say this. The one thing that I've learned being out of the classroom for these, I think now almost 6 years now, since I've been in the K-12 space as a teacher, is that when we first enter those spaces, we don't look at ourselves as personal brands. We look at ourselves as employees. We are employees for a district, employees for this school, this organization. And because of that mindset, we navigate it in a way that allows for others to dictate the path that they want us to take. So when you remove yourself from that situation, now you have the autonomy to do all the things that you never thought you would be able to do in that setting. So to get a taste of that and to have to now go back into this confined space where you don't have that autonomy, that's tough. That's tough.
Like I said, sacrifices had to be made, and a bit of a loss of autonomy, that was one of those sacrifices.
I know that's for sure. So as we're approaching the last few minutes of this conversation, I do want to get to some more, I guess you could say, juicy stuff, because honestly, this is the reason why we had to wait for so long that this conversation. And I do want to give you the opportunity to talk about this new old transition that you're about to make back into the international school space. So talk to me about this transition that you're currently about to embark on.
So many feelings and thoughts. This is such a significant time because it is exactly 10 years apart from when I left the country with my daughter for the very first time. Wow. We left the country July 25th together in 2015. My son and I will be leaving July 21st, 2025. So it's just, I feel like not often in life do we get a reset button or a retry or what would you do differently this time? And this in a way feels like a parallel universe version of me. Like, you know, the first time I was leaving with my son going to Southeast Asia. I'm sorry, my daughter. Now I'm leaving with my son going to Southeast Asia. And so we will be going to Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm so excited to say we're going to be Jakarta Intercultural School Tigers. And I'm so excited about this transition. You know how, like, once you start going to conferences and you meet people at different schools and they just have a light to them, you're like, I want to know more about this school. So I went to a conference in Italy to learn about tiered assessment. And the person who was doing it was a week-long workshop. So we really spent a lot of time. His name is David Suarez, and he's the middle school math lead. And to this day, I still use things that I learned from that conference. I still have my binder. I've had my eye on that school. So when a friend of mine who works there said, hey, we have some math positions, I applied that same night because I'm like, I have always wanted to know what it'd be like to work at that school and to work with David and to just be a part of that experience. So this is so big because I never imagined, there are so many international schools, never imagined that I'd actually have an opportunity to work at that school. And it feels good going there because I did have those 3 years experience in Southeast Asia. Then I've been through all these other experiences that have kind of mellowed me out a bit. You know, when I first moved, I was 30, 31 years old. Now I'll be 41. And, you know, turning 40 kind of settles your spirit a little bit anyways. So I'm definitely a more settled version of myself than when I left the first time. So I'm just looking forward to what is this going to be like with this version of me that I am now. So I can't wait to get there and share out and report back and let you know how it's going.
Yes. And then the final question before we really wrap up, and it's the one that I ask everybody on this platform. How do you stay true to the teacher in you?
I show up as my full self every day. I show up as my full self every day. I am in spaces. You know, when you're teaching in private schools and international private schools, I'm just going to say it. People want you to play the game.
That's
And I'm like, I am not here to play the game. I am here to experience life, to make connections, to learn, to grow. There are so many things that I am doing here and playing a game. Those are not those things. So I make sure everyone knows, you know, even down to the interview process. I always interview in big earrings and purple lipsticks and bright colors because I need you to know how I'm showing up. I crack jokes in interviews on myself. Like I want you to make an informed decision. And because I show up as myself in the interview, I have no problem showing up as myself in the workplace because I'm like, you knew who I was. But I stay true to who I am as an educator, a math educator, a secondary math educator, because a lot of people don't talk about, you know, what it's like to teach upper level mathematics and still be relevant and culturally relevant. So being my best self, my true to me self, is when I am showing students how they can use the math that they have to understand the problems of the world today. Because I know a lot of teachers, a lot of time in math, teachers tell students, oh, you need to know this math to solve the problems. Like there's problems in the world you can solve with math. And I think that's a lot to put on a 16-year-old. But maybe if I tell them and show them, like, this is what's really going on in our world. You know, I've exposed them to research articles with models of the exponential rise and growth of the number of publications on hate speech. And they use principles that they learned in pre-calculus to analyze when did it grow the fastest, what was happening in our world during that time, what was happening in technology, politics, all that. So when I can help students see how they can use the math, no matter what level they're on, from algebra to calculus, to understand our world, that's when I know I'm being true to why I stepped in that classroom in the first place.
And that's how we gonna end it.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't believe this is the first podcast you've been
It
on
is.
as a guest.
It is. I was ready to tell my story. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate you for giving me this space.
you sound like a veteran already. You sound like a veteran, and we gonna find a way to get you on more platforms because people need to hear your voice. It's important that people see you and know that they can aspire to be the human that you are. So I thank you, Kia, for coming on. And I want to give you the opportunity to just share real quick how people can connect with you on social media and what they can do to support the work you're doing, whether it's with MC Squared, the jewelry store.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let you holler them right now.
Well, I am not really on social media, but I am on TikTok as the TikTok math queen. So if you want to check me out there and share videos with your students, I would appreciate that. Right now, my focus on TikTok is geometry and pre-cal, but there'll be more things coming. I do have my company, Exceptional Math Coaching and Consulting. If you want to check us out, what else do I do? So many different things. Where else? Oh, LinkedIn. So I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. I'm a bit more of a lurker than a poster, but I learned so much there. I love connecting with people there. So that's why I changed my name to Tekia Timmons, even though I know you have never called me Tekia. That's how you can all find me. And if you are looking for jewelry, you can find me at Boutique Latrice on Etsy. Thank you.
All right. So there it is. And we'll make sure to put all those handles and information in the episode notes. So we're going to wrap it up here on behalf of Kia. Thank you all for coming on for another episode of Identity Talk Educators Live. And I hope that you come back for another episode. So I'm going to wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, y'all.